Welcome, everyone. You have just tuned in to The Father Show, and I'm your host, Mike Thompson. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And today we really do have a fantastic show. We have Patrick Beebe, and we're going to be talking about parental alienation and estrangement. So this is something you definitely want to hear about. It's something you want to know about as well. But before we get there, if you have not subscribed to the show, I would ask that you go to the subscribe button and hit that notification bell as well and subscribe to our show. And when you hit that notification, then you know every time we have a show that's put up, and that's all the time. For those of you also are looking for resources, I would ask that you would go to the Father Show with MikeThompson.com and click on the resource button, and there you will find resources that can aid you in whatever that you may need. And if you cannot find what you're looking for, just send us an email at thefathershow@gmail.com, and we will try to find that information for you and help you get the service that you need. All right. So don't forget about that. Please do. And we love to make sure that you have everything you need to be the best version of yourself. So before we waste any more time, I really want to get into this subject because it's huge, and I've experienced it, and our guest that is going to be on the show has experienced it as well. And it is really something that our kids have a long effect when they have been dealing with parental alienation and estrangement. It bothers them for years, for the rest of their life, really. So we want you to be knowledgeable about it, know what to look for, know who you can contact to get some help that you need. So without further ado, I want to welcome Patrick Beebe to the show. Hey, Patrick, how you doing?
I am well, Mike. Thank you
Good.
very much for having me on the show. I do appreciate it.
Oh man, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Number one, it's great to have somebody with your credentials and your expertise to come on here and talk about what parental alienation estrangement is, because a lot of people don't know. They might even be doing it themselves and don't realize that
Correct.
they are part of the problem. So, why don't you tell the audience what is parental estrangement and alienation?
Parental alienation is an estrangement. It's basically the same thing. And what it is um, in this country, the divorce rate for first time marriages is 40 to 50%. During that time, there is if it's a divorce rate, if during the divorce there is about 80% of that first time divorces is a high conflict divorce, which means there's a lot of arguing. If there's kids involved, they put the kids against each other, one parent to the other. Usually it's more of the caregiver or the custodial parent that will put the kids against the non custodial parent. And with that, that's what the alienation is, because the custodial parent is trying to control and manipulate, brainwash the child or children against the non custodial parent to get them on their side. The custodial parent really does not um, have the children's best interests at heart. They do not have um, the feelings. I mean, they care for their kids, but the kids are not their priority on this. What the priority is, the custodial parent wants to gain control of everything. So what they do is they will tell the children that, hey, your father or your mother, depending who it is, usually the custodial parent is the mother and the non-custodial is the father. So it is a one-sided issue, and I'm not saying that to be sexist, but usually the women in this country do get the custodial parentship of children. So the fathers are non-custodial; they get the weekends, they get the Wednesdays, however the uh, court order is. Well, the mother, if it's a bad divorce, a lot of yelling, a lot of manipulation, the mother, if the kids do get to go to the fathers, when they get back, the custodial parent will drill them. Well, what'd you do? What'd they say? What'd they say about me? Where are you sleeping? What are you doing on this? Or the custodial parent will make up some excuse when the non-custodial parent comes to pick up the children. um, they'll say, make an excuse. Oh, they don't want to come. They don't want to be with you this weekend, or they're sick, or they have this other issue. They don't want to come with you. This is the estrangement, and this goes on from the time the separation until kids are 18, even further on. And what happens with the children when they get later in life? They have these issues because of what happened. They've never learned to properly deal with hardships. Um, Depending on the age of the children when it starts, depends how fast it'll take hold. Younger children, say anywhere between 3 to 6 years old, 7 years old, it's the manipulation takes a hold very quickly. If it's between, say, 7 and 13, 14, if there's older, it'll take a little bit longer for the children to side with the custodial parent just to save the arguing. But if they're older, 14 to 17, 18, it takes a lot longer because usually those children do have their own thoughts, their own ideas about what's going on. So it takes longer for it to take effect, but it will take effect at some point in time. And the later in life effects only affect the children, as in not being able to properly um, handle relationships, whether personal or professional, but it also affects the targeted parent or the non-custodial parent in the same way, because there's a relationship that they lost. And if they never get it back, then there's that hole in their life that they cannot properly fill. So there's always this emptiness that they feel no matter what they do is never going to get full or filled. They kind of jump from one relationship to another, or they have drinking issues or drug issues.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a long term effect. You might be thinking you're doing it just to alienate your former spouse. But let me ask you,
Mm-hmm.
what does that the person that does the alienation and estrangement, is that the person that didn't want the divorce?
No, that's the person more likely that did want the divorce because they they still want to control everything. They're not happy in the situation they're in, so they are trying to control the situation afterwards. No, they're the ones that want the divorce usually. I'm not saying
Okay.
all the time, but usually. And their personality on this is narcissistic. They're very narcissistic personality, which means they have to be right. They have to be in control of everything. I mean, from day to day to day to day.
Okay. Because I know now you mentioned when I was reading your bio that you experienced this yourself. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
Yeah, mine was back in the early '90s, and I had two daughters. I was active duty military, living in Florida. Um, Back then, parental alienation was not as well known as it is now. Okay.
Right.
Um, a term was coined by Richard Gardner in about 1980. He was a clinical psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and he noted that children of divorced parents that were in amicable children that were a situation, custody situation, the parents that were, he noticed different behaviors. Started doing research on them, coined the term um, parental alienation. In 1991 is when my divorce started the process and custody battle.
Mm-hmm.
It went from Florida, brought back up to Michigan. I got out of the service so I could be with my kids because the kids were brought up here. We were in court, and at the time there was a temporary order. We both had um, um, custody of the kids because they were young. They were two and a
Right.
half, and they were 4.5. So we, I went in to finalize the divorce, and I wanted full daughters. We went into court, and the judge, it was my turn to speak. I said, Your Honor, I said, when I go to pick up my kid, she's always making an excuse. This is happening or that's happening. You, she says they don't want with me. They don't want this. And my daughter was a daddy's girl. I mean, she wanted me what, but she told the judge that she didn't want to be around me. My youngest was more of a mama's girl, but she did what Big Sissy did, so she would come to
Okay.
daddy. We were in court, and I told the judge, I said, Your Honor, I said, believe this is parental alienation syndrome. Like I said, very young at the time, about 5 years in the making. And the judge looked at me and goes, Do you have a degree? I said, No, Your Honor, I don't. He goes, Well, how do you know about this? I said, Well, I said, I know how to research. I know how to look up books and, and read. He don't have a degree. You don't know what you're talking about. He goes, Sit down in my until you know what you're talking about. He goes, I don't want to hear another word about it. 5 minutes later, he gave my ex full custody of my kids, and my visitation was few and far between. So at that point in time, I said, "That's it," because I didn't. I didn't have a degree, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at that point in time, I said, "Oh, fine." So I started studying more and more on it, doing research on it. When I went back to school, got my bachelor's in behavioral psych. My my main focus on alienation. My master's, my focus parental alienation, and then 4 years after that, I went back to school and got my doctorate. And it's general psychology. I'm not a clinician, but I'm my research is parental alienation, of course.
Yeah.
But I deal with the later in life outcomes of what happens to the children when they get later in life, also with the targeted parent. A lot of the is of when it's going now, but mine is later to the kid targeted parent. So that's actually how I got into it, Mike.
Yeah. And I understand that, like you, I experienced this, the same thing where the
Mm-hmm.
mom tried her best to keep me away from my daughter and kept me in court as much as possible. Uh,
Yep,
like you
that's exactly
said,
what they do.
this was what, about 25 years ago. So parental alienation, nobody really knew anything about it. I didn't even know anything about it. I wasn't expecting it. And actually, it was going on, and I didn't even really know, other than the hatred that she felt for me because I wanted the divorce. It was kind of opposite of what you were mentioning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted the divorce, and I grant you, I know it really kind of hurt her when it happened, but she did that with my daughter, and I can see my daughter's over 30 now, and I can still see the effect that it had on my daughter from her trying to keep my daughter away from me as much as she could. So I
Mm-hmm.
understand and I agree with you. People don't understand the long term effect. They're just
No, they do
angry
not.
right now, and they want to try to keep your child away from you to hurt you. And
Yep.
what they end up doing is really hurting the child.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And I know you was
See, when they,
mentioning about that.
yep, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you.
The children later in life outcomes, what the children are seeing is one, they don't have enough defense mechanisms to handle any kind of um, tension, any kind of disagreement in their life. They don't know how to handle bad news. They don't know how to handle, when I was growing up, this is kind of a thing. When I was growing up in a game, you had your winners and losers,
Right.
so you learn to deal with disappointment. Nowadays, there isn't that. These kids don't know how to deal with disappointment properly because they don't see it when the parents are, you know, in, you know, of this divorce. So what happens is the later in life outcomes, um, children, they think, oh yeah, I get to, in my 20s, I'm this and that. I dealt with it, I put it behind me. No, they haven't. What happens is once they start doing their professional careers, even in personal relationships, they will start, if they've never dealt, they'll see a pattern of them switching partners, personal relationships every 2 to 4 years. Same thing with jobs, in their professional career. They'll job hop from this to this to this. It could also get to the point where it's so bad that they start using drugs,
Uh-huh.
start dealing with alcohol. They start self. I know one instance, a good friend of the mission had this person. She was in her late, give or take, and she was a self abuser. She cut herself so she could feel something,
Yeah.
and he never knew exactly what to call it because he could never get to the bottom. And then when we were in school together, and he found specialty was, he goes, "Could this affect?" I go, "Yes, it does." I mean, this is kind of the extreme, okay? So
Yeah,
once
but
he
it's still
was going
there.
on, yeah, it is, you know, um, and if the people do not deal with it, then yes, you're like I said, you're gonna have later life issues. Even the targeted parent, they think, okay, now they're 18, now they're away from it, it's going to get better, but it never does. Even build their relationship, it's still not repaired. There's still issues. They are going to suffer also.
Yeah.
And like I said before, it's usually the fathers that are the ones suffering because the mothers are the custodial parents. They're the one manipulating, brainwashing, whatever term you want to use against them. So
Yeah.
others have that loss and they carry it on to relationships still. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah. So, what are some of the different effects that you have seen uh, in later in life?
Oh, pardon, what was that? Some of the what are the what
What are
effects?
some of the what are some of the different effects that you've seen that a person have later in life? I know you mentioned some earlier.
Um, yeah, one individual specifically. I grew up with this person in school. Great friends, and she went off, got married, and it was actually reversed. She was the one that was manipulated, so it was kind of a reverse situation. Um, the kids that her two daughters, well, there's a daughter and then a stepdaughter, but her son, he grew up. She thought he was fine, said, "Yep, no problem, we're good to go." Had a relationship with mom and dad. Every thought was fine, and then he started having major issues at his job, and he was a internet a tech person,
Okay.
IT individual, so very intelligent individual, happy, had a good life, girlfriend, getting married. 2 months of marriage, he sat out in his front yard and shot himself.
Wow.
And it came out that he was leaving. He was a writer. He journaled.
Uh
When they
huh.
got the journals, come to find out that mom and dad couldn't properly do this, so I never learned to handle this and this and this. So it's just my opinion, but others that have seen research believe that it went back to, them, the divorce, how bad it was, the
Yeah.
abuse that it received. Because is a it's not physical, but it's sexual abuse that the children are getting. You
Do you
know,
know how old he
um,
was when the parents got divorced?
I I believe he was 10.
Yeah.
I mean, he was preteen, but he was a young. So he was issued that age group that he was the oldest. If he would have been had an older sibling, it may not have turned out this way.
Yeah.
Um, then I mentioned the individual that a cutter, a user that actually feels thing
Yeah.
because she shut down. She shut down. Never felt nothing. Had bad relationships. She was a self abuser cutter, so she could feel something. I know somebody that their brother went. They both went through it. He was the oldest. The brother was like 2 years young. Um, this individual made it through it. He became, very successful. Is very successful. Basically, dealt with it properly. His brother didn't. His brother alcoholic.
Uh,
I mean, he drinks. He said his brother drinks like 2 fifths a day. He's that bad.
two
So
fifths a day?
2 fifths a day. I mean,
Wow.
that's all he does. Yeah. Um, and I know if the friend of mine probably like, what do you? Since I'm not giving names, he'll laugh. But yeah, he drinks. He gets up in the morning, goes to bed, is out. He drinks. That's all he does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he jumps from girlfriend to girlfriend. So it could be that severe, or it could just be to the point where um, someone has anger issues. The kids have anger
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
because they're argumentative.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
such a
they're
large
angry.
spectrum of what.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They're angry for the divorce and how it turned out. And
Hmm.
sometimes, in some cases, I think they are
And
angry because they didn't have a relationship with the other parent.
yes,
And,
and
and
they
they,
were put in the middle. They were
yeah.
a pawn.
Or they feel abandoned by the other parent,
Yeah.
even though
Yes.
that's not the parent's attention. That's not what he intended, but that's how
True.
it ended up. And one thing that I really like parents to understand that kids have a tendency to blame themselves for
Yes.
what has the divorce, the arguments, the alienation, all of that. They take that in and they think they're
Hmm.
the reason that is going on.
Yes, and that is a term called fawning. The child, takes the blame and tries to appease the um, target,
Right.
the manipulating parent. So there isn't that anymore. It's called fawning. Children
Yeah.
are doing.
Yeah. It's really something that bothers me because I do see the effect on kids. And you mentioned it earlier.
Mhm.
We don't teach kids to win and lose. It's just everybody's supposed to be a winner, and you can't do
Yep.
that. I remember,
No.
my kids were in sports, and I was glad my son got out before they started that everybody wins, nobody is a loser. And it's like, really? Somebody has to lose. Where is going to be your
Yep.
competitiveness if you don't have to strive to win? If somebody's just going to hand it to you, say, oh, well, you gave it a good shot. We're going to let you win
Yeah.
anyway. No.
Yep.
Where's the drive? Where's the go get it? I want it and let's go get it.
Mhm.
And we need that even in life because if you want a career, you got to go out there and get it. You're not gonna be able to sit on your couch and it's just gonna fall in your lap.
Right. And these don't know that these days because they've never learned it, and it's worse with kids that are going through divorce and because they're not learning it in schools and they're not learning it now from their parents, the ones they should be learning it from,
Yeah,
and how to proper and gracious, and that builds character, and that makes you who you are, and you need that for later in life to a productive adult.
yeah. Well, Patrick, what is some way that and since we, mainly talk about fathers, and what is some way that a
Mhm.
father can deal with this, the alienation and estrangement? Is there something that you could recommend that a parent could do to offset this in some kind of way?
They are going through it right now. Um, Journal. This it may sound very generic, it may sound very basic, but journal. Every time you say the father goes to pick up the kids and the mother says, "No, I don't want to," or the children themselves say, "I can't be with you. I don't like you, whatever." Go home, you write it down.
Yeah.
If you call, write it down. I mean, it sounds very basic and generic, but it it helps in so many ways. You know, um, it's hard to know how it helps, but what it does is one, author's getting it out right now on paper. He can remember it later if he needs to,
Right.
but he's also getting it down to help. Okay, this happened to me, instead of keeping it bottled up
Yeah.
and screaming later, or not even screaming, just keeping it bottled up, and then one day he just explodes.
Well, yeah, it
It's
has
a new
a
relationship.
lot of benefits. Like
Yes.
you mentioned, is writing it down for memory's sake,
Mm-hmm.
writing it down
Yep.
for legal sake, in case you have to fall back on
Yep.
that. It's
Yep.
also one thing that I like about that is the fact that you say you pass away and your kids are still like, well, he just never loved me and he didn't care. They have a journal now that they can
Yes.
read to see, hey, wait a minute. No, my daddy did care. He wrote
Yep.
down that he came on this day. He wrote down that he called. And I've even told fathers, I said, make sure you even still send a card for their birthday
Yes.
or Christmas, so whatever. If they didn't get it, still write it down so that way
Yep.
one day they will know, and hopefully that would help them to realize that you did care and you did love them.
Yep.
And,
See,
and hopefully that'll make them feel better.
oh yeah, I mean that's excellent. That's because back then, I mean, I knew some stuff about it, but I didn't. For 5 years, I sent Christmas presents, I sent cards, I sent all that,
Yeah.
but the cards got back to me. I have
Yeah.
no clue what happened to the Christmas gifts, if they got them or if the names are ripped off them and she put her name on them.
Right.
But
Right.
after 5 years, I just got I got of the fighting and arguing, and I shouldn't have, and I did. I gave up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't journal, and that was my fault. That I deal with every day because I do not have a relationship with my kids to this day, and it's
Oh,
been
I'm sorry.
26, 27 years.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
Um, well, thank you. Um, but that's on me, and that's why I went through what I did, education I did, so I can help or help people not go through what I did.
Yeah.
And if they are, show to make it better so you can build that relationship back.
Well, that's
I
a
honestly do not.
no.
Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm saying I honestly do not want fathers to go through what I did and have the regrets
Yeah.
that I do for not doing stuff that I should have. I mean, later in life I learned, oh yeah, I should have done this and this and this, because back then I had no clue. I mean, I was, no one talked about it back
Right.
then. It was a
Right.
taboo, and it's like, oh, it doesn't happen. It does happen.
Yeah.
So
Well, Patrick, this is one
here,
reason we do the show because
yeah,
like you said, you've been through it. I've been through it. I have multiple friends that have been through it. Some with, I have one friend of mine that he had two girls as well, and they were taken away. The mother took off with them, really.
oh
And so
man,
he didn't get to see him, didn't get to talk to him. And the girls were told different things about him. Needless to say, they
oh
were
yeah,
negative.
yeah,
But after they got older and became an adult, he still reached out to him. He has successfully reunited with one of them. But even though the other one knows that her sister has reunited with the dad and is telling her, no, whatever mom was telling you, that wasn't the case, she still refused to build a relationship with him.
yeah,
So it is something that, you know, happens. And that's why we do the show because I want men out there, young and old, not to go through what you and I have gone through.
yeah,
And I want I really hope mothers listen to this. And like you said, I know there's some fathers out there that have done the same thing. So I'm
yes,
not
yep,
excluding them. But I want mothers to understand the effect that they have on their kids. even though you might say, I'm just doing it right now just to irk him, but that long term irkness is going to stay with that child for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And what the mothers or the manipulators don't understand that later when the kids get older and they kind of realize, know if they still want to have nothing to do with their parent, they realize what the non-targeted, I'm sorry, the targeted parent, but they don't, the manipulating parent won't realize is these kids are going to resent them for what they
Right.
did to
Right.
them against them. And, it's everybody loses when this happens. I don't
Yeah.
care who you are.
Right.
The kids, the kids are the big losers, but the fathers, even the mothers lose. Everybody loses. There are no winners,
Yeah.
and it needs to be, out there. We need to help. And, thank you for doing this, helping the fathers, you know.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wish when I was growing up, growing up when I went through this, I had someone out there that,
And I do too. I wish that I had someone to talk to me when I was going through it,
yeah,
and even to help me with that anger, because
yes,
I was pretty pissed off all the time.
oh yeah.
But and I'm sure, yeah, you understand that. So
And see, that's the funny thing is now, like I said, it's been 26, 27 years. I am just finally dealing with the anger. I mean, it all this time. I am
yeah,
finally dealing with the anger. Friend of mine. Um, he's a colleague, but he's also someone who's helped me. I
yeah,
finally did do something, but it was much too late.
yeah. Well, Patrick, I want to thank you so much for being on the show and providing your story, and also to providing this great information. And, it is important, and it is something that a lot of men have experienced. And like I said, I know a lot of women too. So even the fathers out
Yep.
there, I want you to understand, don't do it, because it'll come back to bite you
Correct.
in the ass. And I'm going to tell you from experience, and I know, Patrick, you would agree,
Yeah.
maybe, it will come back
Oh
and
yeah.
bite you in the ass.
Yes,
So,
it will.
yeah. So don't do it. Don't put that effect on your child and ruin your child life. You say you love them. If you really love them, don't do that to your kid, because you're
Right.
really ruining them and you're messing up their life. But
Yep.
Patrick, before you go, I want you to tell the audience how they can get in touch with you, and if any person out there that needs your assistance or wants to talk to you and get some better ideas, how can they get a hold of you?
I do have an email. It's called estrangementcoach2016.com, and also through my cell phone. The number is, I have no issues giving it out. It's 269-830-3164. And I am willing and happy to help anybody who needs it.
That's great, because it is, and I admire you and I applaud you for letting people contact you and helping them so they don't feel what you and I have felt. And at least I have a relationship with my daughter. I feel for you. Not, you have two daughters and you don't have a relationship with them, and I know whether they want to admit it or not, it affects them. And
Yeah, more likely they probably don't, but you're right.
oh,
But
it
thank you.
affects
And I
them.
have to talk to you for
It
this.
affects them. Yeah, I,
Yep.
they. I'm sure in some part of their life, they still miss their dad. And they wonder.
Hopefully.
And I understand how you can stop, because I literally, like you, were going to move to out of the country. I was going to move out of the state. I was going to move out of the country, and just so that I can, one, I thought that might stop her from alienating my daughter and me.
Oh, yeah.
And I
No.
figure if I'm not in the picture, she'll stop, abusing my daughter. But
Yeah.
I decided to stay, and it took me a long time to fight to get her, but it happened. But a lot of men, that's one of our things. We'll just say, screw it. I can't deal with that, and I'm
Yep.
just gonna go. That's, I think, a part of our nature. We don't want the drama, so we're like, okay, one day, and I do have another friend that has a daughter that was the same age, and that's what happened to him. And he still doesn't have really a relationship with her because of that. And it bothers him. And I have a
Oh
feeling
yeah.
it bothers her as well.
Uh, you said that about men. Oh yeah, we'll just screw it. You're right.
Yeah.
We as men think, oh yeah, it's not going to bother us. We'll just and never think about it again. But we have just as many problems because we don't have kids, or we had the kids, manipulated from us or whatever.
Yeah.
It affects us just as bad, but we won't admit it, and that's the
Yeah.
problem is we won't admit it.
Right. Right.
It's
Because
like,
we
oh
don't want
no,
to
we're not
seem
doing that
weak.
much.
We don't want to seem weak. So we're not going to admit it. But it
Yep,
does.
that's exactly it. So
All right. Well, I hope a lot of men will contact you that are experiencing this, will contact you and get some
yeah,
help and talk with you just to be able to talk it out, just to get that anger off of their chest and
yeah.
maybe find some different ways to handle it and deal with it. So,
Well, like I
thank you.
said, I'm a psychologist. I'm also a life coach, so
Okay.
handle
All
both
right.
avenues.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you, Patrick. Thank you for being on the show. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be our show for today. Excuse me, I'm a little stuffed up, so I apologize. But that is our show for the day. I really want to thank Patrick BB for coming on the show to share his story and to tell what we can do about parental alienation and estrangement. It is a really one of the things that when you're going through a divorce that can really damage everybody, not just the kids who we say we love, who we say we're going to protect, but yet still we're going to put this negative thought about the other parent in their mind just so that they won't want to go see them and you can keep control. That's not really in the best interest of your child, and that's not in the best interest of you because it is going to come back to bite you in the butt. But before we go, if you have not subscribed to the show, please subscribe to the show and hit that notification bell and let everyone know about the show. This show is for you. We're here. Patrick is here and other guests are here so that you don't have to experience what we have experienced. So tell somebody else, let them know that the Father Show is here for them, and we're glad that we have something out there that's going to help the fathers. So, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, thank you for joining us. I will see you then, and if my camera gets back in focus. But you guys have a blessed week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.